We'll begin the news with news as President Bola Tinubu assuring Nigerians that 2026 will be a more prosperous year for all. Tinubu stated this in his New Year address on Thursday, his New Year message to Nigerians, adding that his administration would sustain the momentum on its major reforms. The president said that the focus in 2026 would be on consolidating the gains and continuing to build a resilient, sustainable, inclusive, and growth-oriented economy. According to him, Nigeria closed 2025 on a strong note, as despite the policies to fight inflation, it recorded a robust GDP growth each quarter, with annualized growth expected to exceed 4% for the year. Tinubu explained that the nation maintained trade surpluses and achieved greater exchange rate stability, while inflation declined steadily and reached below 15%, in line with his administration's target. For in-depth analysis on this, Professor Semion Nnah joins us now. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on. Professor Nnah is also a current affairs analyst as he joins us here this afternoon. First of all, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year. A prosperous one indeed.
A prosperous one indeed. And it seems the same for Nigeria. I mean, the president says that 2026 will be more prosperous for Nigerians and that there would most likely be a substantive gain in terms of our GDP. From your perspective, how realistic is this assurance given the current economic conditions we've seen across the festive season?
Well, talk is cheap. It is only when it's being implemented that we'll begin to say it is uhuru. Nobody can just say it is uhuru yet, but the president's speech was up to speed with what everybody expected. However, it is not just rhetorics. We want to see in implementation. Some of us are have some, reservations from a benefit of hindsight. You know, when he came in, he said subsidy were removed, and we expected that this removal would have translated to, more funds for projects. However, we are still borrowing. So with that in mind, we will not just look at the speech and then now just give a pass mark. The speech itself is okay. I can tell you that for free. The people that crafted the speech, they did a good job. However, the question now is how are these things going to be implemented? Because already we have crisis brewing, and then the tax regime is a crisis that is going to brew in this year that started today. Because it's been proven now that the tax reform that was signed is not exactly what the National Assembly passed. Recall that the last time I was on this station, I was expressing shock at the sinful silence of the Senate. But the Senate has spoken now, and both chambers are in tandem with the fact that some of the things that were smuggled into the tax law were not what they passed. And those things are going to affect the opposition. Recall, too, why some of us are having some reservation is that this is a year of politicking. Everybody that has been in Nigeria knows that a year to the election is not a year that government will do any tangible thing. Whatever they will do is all the monies they will have will be geared towards campaign. So that's why some of us have some reservations.
Right. Let's talk about that GDP growth that I mentioned earlier, because this administration is pointing to the fact that they're saying that the GDP growth might extend or grow beyond 4% as a key achievement. They're mentioning this. And this is all preemptive. We're not sure yet, but they're already mentioning this as a key achievement. How much of this growth do you think is being felt by the ordinary Nigerian if 4% is preemptively one of an achievement for 2025 when it comes to economic reforms by this administration?
You said it earlier. You see, it is one thing to project a thing. Recall that project is something you propose for the coming year. It's not actual. So it's a proposal. But why some of us are having problem with such growth is that their fiscal policies are not in tandem with the monetary policies. You see, what I was taught in school is that your fiscal policy must be in tandem with your monetary policy. Now, their monetary policy, if you look at the interest rates, is at 27%, and they are saying inflation has reduced below 15%. You can't marry the two. You can't marry the two. Over 13% thereabouts. So when you look at some of these projections, there are some holes you are going to be punching, because at the end of the day, these things don't tally. I don't blame the president, because the speech that was couched for him. What I'm saying is that NBS should give us real figures, because those things does not translate to reality, because the people are still suffering. The masses, the trodden masses are still suffering. And telling us that this thing has trickled down, that the inflation rate has gone down. Where has it gone down? Right. Yes, it has gone down a little bit, but who hiked it? It was this same administration that hacked inflation, and they are now telling us that they are bringing it down. They say exchange rate has stabilized. Who pushed the exchange rate to 1.8? Is it not this administration? What was the exchange rate before they came in? So these are the issues. Yeah, so you don't.
Hello? Right. Yeah, I'm with you, Professor, because you just mentioned two things here. The exchange rate stability as well as the inflation, which the president says that it has declined, although still double digit, but now below 15%. You've also talked about the exchange rate stability, and they've all mentioned this as surplus for the economy, as well as trade surpluses as well. And these are all gains to them, right? Besides just looking at, whether or not this is reflecting in terms of real relief and the cost of living crisis that we saw last year and the year prior. I want also to talk about whether or not these are real gains, or, as they said, it's a long-term effect, and we ought to exercise patience and wait. Should Nigerians exercise patience and wait as we're going into 2026?
How long can we exercise patience? Now, if the populists are exercising patience and the government is exercising patience, it will be a different ballgame. But when the government is living large, and they're expecting the populace to exercise patience, I mean, it doesn't tally. That's where some of us are expressing some shocks. If you are saying that there will be belt tightening, it should be across board. The government should tighten their belts as well as the ordinary citizens. You don't ask the ordinary citizens to tighten their belts, and they are living large. See, I was reading the trade surpluses this morning. Anybody can look at that at today's Punch. Right. You can go there and look at it. When they are talking about trade surpluses, did they do anything extraordinary for those trade surpluses? No. It is just the oil, the crude oil, and the selling of refined crude. Listen. There's a lot of manipulation in this economy. There's a lot of deceit in this economy, because you are exporting refined crude and importing refined crude at the same time. Are you aware that Dangote is exporting refined crude and we are importing refined crude? And some of the excesses, the trade surplus we are getting today is from crude, from what I have read even this morning from Punch. So it's not because other sectors of the economy has been improved. It's just the same one single product economy. So that is not progress as far as I'm concerned. We need to get down to brass tacks and show that we are serious with what we are doing. Now, if that had come from agriculture, from entertainment, from other sectors of the economy, one can say, okay, you can roll out your drums. Now, he talked about borrowing, that we didn't have internal borrowing. No. The question I want to ask is, please, let's take this thing home. Is it natural that you have some money at home, 40-something billion, as your reserve, and you are borrowing over that amount? What economic sense does it make? It doesn't make economic sense, because the money you borrowed, you are going to pay interest on it. I understand some of the dynamics. I just want the layman to understand where I'm going. Right. That's why I'm saying that, because it doesn't make economic sense that you are borrowing so much and you are rolling out drums that you have savings. Why didn't you use that, your savings, to shock up the borrowings, instead of borrowing so much and coming to gaslight us that you are not doing a domestic borrowing? Borrowing is borrowing, whether it's domestic or it is foreign.
Professor Nnah, well, let's talk about the economic reforms, right? I mean, most of these economic reforms that we're seeing by this administration, they will continue in this year, 2026. But most importantly, we've also seen the tax reforms, which have now taken full effect starting today, January 1st of 2026. I have to ask you about the risks of all these reforms that are happening all at once or all at the same time. I mean, it feels like, the citizens, there's just so much one can take all at once, right? So what risk should the government be mindful of to avoid, further hardship for Nigerians, for the citizens? Now, we know that contributing from tax into GDP has always been low, and IMF and the other bodies have asked that, the tax contribution increases. But what do we foresee? What would be your call to the government in terms of hardship?
My call to the government is not to listen to World Bank and IMF, because the problem we're having today are the World Bank and the IMF conditionalities. That was what led to, the twin reform of removing subsidy and floating the dollar at the same time. See, I've always constantly argued, because I listened to the late Professor Luku, who was an economic advisor to late Abacha. He said something in the 80s, or in the 90s, early 90s, that I will never forget. When Abacha wanted, the two-time exchange rate, he said something profound. He warned Abacha as his economic advisor. He said, any currency that is not exchangeable in the international market is not biddable, is fixable. Don't bid the Naira, you will destroy the Naira. And they didn't listen. They bidded the Naira. From then till now, that's how Naira has been destroyed. And IMF had been the proponent of this floating of the Naira. And that is, they have succeeded with this administration, and then they are still going further with the tax regime. Even when there are lacunas in the tax law that was signed, and people are calling for restraint, please take this thing back to the National Assembly. Let them do the needful. He still said he was going to implement. And a lot of people, I've listened to a lot of experts, tax experts, because I'm not one, and they said that if these tax laws are implemented the way it is today, it is targeted at opposition. They are going to use it to ensure that some of them had issues in the coming election. And we see that play out in 1979 when they said Zik did not pay his tax as at when due. They said he paid his tax when due, not as at when due. You see, because some of these grammatical flaws is what they want to use to target some people in this period. And I said it's not going to pan well for this country if they continue with this. So my advice to government is that listen to voice of reason, send that bill back to the National Assembly. The people are in court already. And the court said they cannot grant the ex parte motion. So they have adjourned till 9th of January. But the government should listen to voice of reason, send the bill back to the National Assembly, and let them do the needful. All those areas that the government, I don't want to use the word fraudulently. The government now went to add things that were not there originally. They should look at it again and expunge some of them that needs to be expunged, so that we can have a seamless policy to implement. No, tax is a social contract, and right. It should be such that you are not meant to milk the people dry. Yeah, there are some good things in the tax regime, but let them do the right things and let the right things seem to be done before we can move ahead. Otherwise, the masses will continue to suffer.
Professor, I mean, you're not one of the masses, unfortunately for me. You are the upper middle class. You are the upper echelon of citizens,
we don't have any middle class again. You are either top there or you are down here.
And you are at the top, and you are my other at the top. In the famous words. But I do have to ask.
I don't belong to any political party. It's the politicians now that have all the money.
I can see from your you're a chief, in your own rights. Even your attire says otherwise.
I am not. I just pin on the attire.
But I do have to ask.
I don't even intend to be one. Because that would be a demotion.
It takes a lot to wear that outfit, sir. So whatever you say, your actions say otherwise, and I'm going by your actions. But I do have to ask you, as we round up this hour, because we're pressed for time, going into 2026, all of that's been said, because I mean, the presidents and this administration, they are very good at owning the narrative and being able to push out what they want to push out, right? And we've seen this over in 2025. And from the president's New Year's message, he's recorded, according to him and according to his administration, they've recorded a number of gains. But like you said, many of Nigerians are yet to feel it. So what would it look like in terms of if that economic promises have been fulfilled or achieved and there's prosperity? What do you think will be the first indicators of that for the average Nigerian?
The first indicator for the average Nigerian is that things are going to come a little bit affordable for the common man in the market. We need to have that narrative that things will be affordable to the common man. By the time you now discover that most of these things are trickling down the lane, there are no white-collar jobs any longer. But by the people that are in the blue-collar jobs, the environment is not suitable for them because of the insecurity in the country. That's another thing that is causing a problem. The insecurity and inflation rate, they are too high for people that want to delve into the blue-collar job to make gains. So government should look at interest rates. Right. And then those policies, please, let them walk the talk. Because if they walk the talk and things pan out the way they have proposed it, it will be a win-win for all. And government will be happier for it.
All right. Professor, I must say thank you for taking out time to join us for the last 15 minutes, just giving us in-depth analysis following our President's New Year message. Once again, thank you, Professor Semion Nnah is a current affairs analyst, just giving us insight into what we should look out for as it regards economic stability for 2026. Once again, thank you, sir.
We'll have a prosperous New Year.
And yourself as well, sir.